think one thing that we don't talk about enough in the notary business is mindset, right? We talk about how to get your commission. We talk about marketing. We talk about, how to get notary jobs, whether it be general notary or loan signing. But then there's an important piece of once you get that job, that next step, right? Preparing yourself for what you may encounter when you walk through that door of a business or someone's home, what you may encounter in the process of doing your notary. So I think the first part of preparing for that is just preparing your own mood and your own disposition, right? This is a job, this is a business for a lot of people. So oftentimes we concentrate on getting the work done and getting the payment. But we also have to remember that when we're walking into people's homes, people are going through different times of their life. Depending on what the documents are that you are notarizing for them, it could be the best day of their life, it could be the worst day of their life. You don't know that until typically when you get the documents, you may get a little glimpse of what you're walking into, but typically not until you're sitting at that table with that person and you're starting to hear what the situation is. So there's a little bit of self preparation and just kind of being open to whatever is going to be the situation that you're going to encounter in this signing. And then the other piece I tell people is just be prepared to give people a little bit of grace, right? You don't know what the situation is. You don't know what has brought them to this point. You don't know whether, it's been a good experience or a negative experience prior to you coming in. A lot of times people don't understand that you don't work in the prior part of the process. So for example, if it's a loan or a refi that's been a particularly, pain in the butt to get through, oftentimes people will blame you because they think you work for the lender or you work for the title company. So you're the first person that gets in front of them, and now they want to jump on you about all of the things that have gone wrong in the process. And typically I just politely say to them, hey, I understand, these things are rough. I've done a few refinances of my own. I own property, but just to let you know, I'm an independent notary and I'm not involved in the process prior to this. My part in the process is to ensure that we walk through your documents, you sign where it needs to be signed, I notarize where it needs to be notarized, and it goes back to your lender or to your title company so that your process can be finished. And that's really, my only part in this process. And typically when you explain it that way, they understand, and they still may want to vent a little bit more, but at least they don't want to beat up on you as the target of everything that's gone wrong in the process up until this point. Typically, you're going to run into refinances and home purchases. And for the most part, those are positive experiences, right? People are buying a new home. They're excited. Even if the process has been rough, the process is now over. So now they're excited to get to that next stage in their life. They've got a new home. They're going to be moving in, furniture and decorating and all those good things that come with that, right? Sometimes it's going to be a refinance. So even in those occasions, maybe it's not as much quote unquote excitement, but maybe they're saving a couple $100 because they've refinanced at the right time and they have a lower interest rate than what they had before. So now it frees up some cash to pay off some other bills or to do some other things. So those are still positive experiences, right? So those typically go, without incident. But then there's also, especially if you're going to be doing general notary work, sometimes you're going to meet people on their worst days, right? I've never forgot, I had two sisters who were getting power of attorney for their brother who was dying. And when I walked into the house, the two sisters were there, the witnesses that were there who were friends of the family, and the brother was there, kind of like in a recliner. And you could tell that, he wasn't doing that great. So you're going to walk into situations like that and you just, again, you grant people grace. You be as, polite and positive as possible. Given his, what appeared to be a pretty serious illness, he was very pleasant. He and I talked. You still go through your process. You ask for IDs. You make sure that, the person who is signing knows what they're signing. And at the end of the signing, I wished him well. I wished him good luck with whatever he was going through, and wished the family well and good luck with the processes that they were going through in terms of helping him with his affairs. There was another couple who I did a general notary job for, and for whatever reason, they were a fairly young couple who were married, and they were freezing the wife's eggs. And the paperwork that we were doing was almost like joint custody of the eggs. So what I kind of deduced from the situation was that she probably had some type of health issue, and wasn't sure, if her time was running out, to reproduce. So they were taking the step to freeze her eggs just in case, and also establish ownership of those eggs for the two members of the couple. I typically don't ask a lot of questions. I typically don't read more of the documents that I need to, because that is, again, their personal business. But through having the conversation, through going through the things that you do need to read in the paperwork and do have them signed, sometimes you will hear part of the story, or they will share part of the story. And you just have to be a good human being and understand that people may be a little snippy, people may be a little slow in signing these documents because of what the documents entail and the weight that is having on them. And like I said, you just have to extend them a little bit of grace. For you, it's a couple bucks and a few stamps. For them, it may be a life changing thing that they're going through, especially when it's something like freezing eggs for a future pregnancy. Obviously, when you're doing general notary work, there are a lot of divorces. I've had more than a couple of divorce decrees that I had to notarize, and in some cases, one party to the divorce decree was more eager to get the paperwork signed than the other party. I remember a couple where they had talked about it. The woman told the husband that she was going to have me come out and notarize. I was there probably 15, 20 minutes, did all the paperwork with the wife, and the husband just wouldn't come downstairs and sign the paperwork. And then eventually he came downstairs and he still refused to sign the paperwork. And a small argument ensued between the husband and the wife. And I sat, patiently and let them have their conversation. And then eventually he came around and he signed the paperwork. These things are going to happen. And I think these are the things that you don't necessarily hear in training or, in some of these courses. It's the stuff that you don't learn until you experience it. So I think it's important to prepare yourself for those things, prepare yourself to kind of, roll with the punches, especially when it's something like, a divorce or some other, very personal issue that may draw up or bring up some emotions while people are signing the documents and having you notarize them. It's nothing that you can't move past in the notary process, but it's just, these are just the things that you should keep in mind, and the things that you should be prepared to have a little grace and a little bit of patience with when you're doing your signings. That said, you have to remember that you still have a job to do, right? You still have responsibilities that you need to tend to as the notary. So, especially when someone is ill or, has a life impacting condition, it's even more important that you are going through your processes and making sure that what you are notarizing and making sure that the process itself is legit. So checking your IDs, even if that person is, in a hospital bed or whatever, making sure that someone provides an ID for that person, taking the time to have a short conversation with the person who is signing to make sure that, especially in their weakened condition, they understand what it is they're signing. And I typically ask a few basic questions like, hey, Mr. Smith, do you know what it is that we're signing today? And I don't make them give me any type of legal definitions, but, at least if they can say, hey, I'm giving power of attorney to my daughter, or I'm signing over power of attorney documents. And sometimes I'll ask the family to step out while I ask these questions. And then, once the family comes back in, I'll say to them, hey, Mr. Smith, who's this lady? And they'll say, that's Jean Smith. And I'll say, okay, well, who is Jean Smith to you? And then Mr. Smith will say, that's my daughter. I'm good with that. Like, it doesn't have to be, some big involved thing, but you as a notary have to be satisfied that, one, this person is aware of what they're signing. Two, they're not being pressured into what they're signing, and they have some, cognizant understanding of what's going on, who's in the room, where they are, who they are, and again, what it is that they're signing. So, and that becomes more difficult, obviously, when there's, a sick person in front of you, or a person who is having some health conditions, some health issues in front of you. But it's even more important because if that person was to transition and you've signed off on these documents, and now here there is, a family member, contesting, oh, they were too sick to sign those documents. Those documents can't be true. Well, now you can look back in your notes and you say, no, no, no. Before we signed the documents, I asked Mr. Smith his name. I asked him what the documents were that he was signing. I asked him who this person was that was sitting there that he was giving this authority to, and he answered all my questions. He was coherent. He knew what we were talking about. He knew where he was. He knew what the date was. And now if there's ever a question, you can go back to your journal and turn the journal over to, or show that journal to, proper authorities or whoever may be involved. If it gets that far, to say, no, this was on the up and up, and here's how I can prove it. So it's very, very important to go through that process, even when it does feel a little bit uncomfortable or a little bit cold that you're asking this person all these questions and asking them for this information because they're sick. It's going to help everybody down the line. And the other piece that I don't think I mentioned is, typically, if, like in the case of a parent giving power of attorney to a child, I always ask the question and make a note, is there any other siblings? Because I want to be able to note down in my notes that there is a daughter or a son somewhere, and I ask the question, are they aware that this is happening? And do they have any issues about this signing going on? And you can make notes of that as well. Hey, I asked, sister number one, and she said sister number two was aware and there weren't any issues, blah, blah, blah. So the more that you can ask these questions in a conversational manner, the more information you can jot down in your notary journal, so that if issues come up, you are prepared for them, and it's less likely that someone will successfully be able to contest your notary. So it's not only covering you, but it's making sure that the family, who's probably already going through a difficult time, doesn't have any additional issues because now there's someone coming to say that your documents are no good. So just things to keep in mind. Again, a little bit of patience, a little bit of grace, but making sure that you still do your job as the notary, to protect yourself and to protect the family that you're providing a service for. So that's it. That's my rookie tip. I hope this is helpful. Again, I ask you that you subscribe and like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell thing so you get more of our content when we upload it. We really appreciate your support. If you have any more questions or concerns on this issue or any issue, please be sure to drop them in the comments. I try to reply to all of the comments when I see them. And if I get enough of the same, types of questions, then we'll put a video together to kind of address them. So until next time, I'm Kenyatta Donnelly, the Investor Boy. Be well. Told you I'm not here to mess around.